My name is Jimmy, and today you join me in the 2020 BMW X1. For 2020, the X1 has been slightly updated. Introduced back in 2015, the X1 shares its chassis with other BMWs like the X2 and the 2 Series Grand Coupe. But what you may not know is it also shares the same platform with the Mini Cooper Clubman and as well as a Countryman. So underneath it's kind of like a go-kart, at least a little bit like a go-kart. Built in Germany, unlike the bigger X3, 5, or 7, which are all built in the US, the updated styling of the X1 is pretty reserved still. In no way is it as imposing as the, X7. But the grille is now linked together and it is bigger than before. And there's these beautiful, beautiful LED headlamps that they look great and function great as well. The example that we have here has the optional M Sport package, in which you do get body color fender flares as well as a more aggressive front and rear bumper styling. The non-M Sport version is a little bit more grown up, especially in a gray, but this Masano blue metallic is an M Sport exclusive, and I must say it does look stunning in person. From the side, the X1 does have some swoops and scoops on the doors to keep the sheet metal a bit more interesting, but these wheels, they're just a little bit small. They are 19s, but it's probably because of the winter tires that's on here. It just doesn't look as aggressive. Maybe a thicker tire would just look a little bit better here. As for the rear end, the M Sport rear bumper is a bit odd. This gray inlay breaks up the lines and it does add a bit of contrast onto the rear bumper. But I must say, the standard rear bumper, it actually doesn't look bad. Honestly, in my eyes, it looks a little bit better. But no matter which package you choose, you do get dual exhaust out back, and they are 100% real, something that's getting harder and harder to find these days. While the bumper is a bit out there, we do have to admit these big LED tail lamps do finish off their rear end nicely. BMW always have a way to style these just right. A quick kick under the rear bumper pops open the electronic tailgate, revealing 27.1 cubic feet of storage. That is bigger than the Q3. And you can also fold these rear seats down to increase to 58.7 cubic feet. Actually a decent amount of space back here. What's more is under the floor, there's massive hidden cubby. As BMW loves to use run flats, the space that's once used for the spare, it's just an empty cavity, so you can fill it with whatever you want. Moving to the back seat, the X1 is a bit tight. While there's plenty of headroom, even with this panoramic sunroof, your shins may not be too happy. The back of the front seats are scalloped to maximize rear knee room, but your shins may get bruised if you decide to stick your feet under the front seats, as the bottom edge is a bit tight. Just a tad uncomfortable, but there are USB-C ports back here, so at least you can keep your devices charged. As for the front seats, they are actually pretty amazing, at least for the driver. These are the M Sport seats, and they're actually fantastic. They're soft, they're comfortable. They also have adjustable bolsters to really keep you in during cornering. The only downside I would say is, if you have a bigger frame, you may not be as comfortable as these seats are a bit tight. You can sit as high as you want or as low as you want, and there's plenty of lumbar and adjustments to fit most people. Directly in front of the driver, we do have the older style steering wheel. As this is just a refresh, we don't have the newer steering wheel that's found in the 3 or even 8 series. Personally, I like this style a little bit more as the spokes are thinner, but the downside is, unlike the newer steering wheel where the steering wheel here, the button is dead center on the steering wheel itself, this is on the left side of the column, so you do have to reach around to activate it, a small inconvenience. As for the cluster, that too has been updated. Instead of the old analog dials, these are now digital. Sadly, while they are digital, they don't really do a whole lot. Unlike the top model Q3, which can display maps and much, much more, this is just a digital replacement of the analog dials. On the bottom of the dials, there's still the usual trip computer, so you can see fuel economy and, a little bit more, but I just wish there's more that you can do with this digital cluster. As for the infotainment display, that too has been updated as well. Even the base model now, you can get the 8.8-inch touch-enabled widescreen that we have here. It does have wireless CarPlay, no Android Auto. I do have to praise BMW for, the infotainment itself. No matter which car you get, you always find this, row of buttons here. So you can quickly, easily switch radio station or favorites just by, clicking on them. And if you forget which radio station is what, rest your finger on each number and it actually will tell you on the top strip. A neat idea. What bugs me is this volume knob. While it's great to have a volume knob, this in the center has that power button symbol and it rotates with the button. So this annoys me a little bit too much. So during the week when I was driving it, I just ended up using the steering wheel buttons rather than using this knob. Moving on to the climate control, the last item on the center stack, it is nicely laid out with all the buttons one would, eventually need for any climate needs. There's literally nothing to complain about here. You can just jump in and set the correct temperature with ease. Overall, the interior is a really nice place to be. The stitching that spans across the dash and the aluminum trim is high quality, and it's a simple, straightforward design. It's not clumsy, and, well, all the controls are intuitive for anyone to just use. There's even ambient lighting, which does illuminate a few different colors on the dash, front, as well as rear doors. Under the hood, the X1 does have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. In Canada here, we actually don't have too many options. In fact, we only get one drivetrain option. This engine with the 8-speed and X-Drive. In other countries, you can get S-Drive, which is BMW's fancy talk for front-wheel drive, and other engine options as well, including diesels and, well, what have you. But it seems that in Canada here, we're just stuck with this one engine. But no way is that a bad thing. This 2-liter Turbo 4 makes 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, and it holds this 3,700-pound SUV actually pretty well. In fact, it can reach 100 kilometers per hour in about 6.5 seconds. Pretty remarkable numbers, but there is one thing that's wrong. The Mini Cooper Countryman JCW, which shares the same engine, platform, and a whole bunch more. And it received a notable power bump in 2020 to 301 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque, cutting that 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time by a full second compared to this X1. I kind of wish this M Performance model actually had that engine. It will make this an actual M Performance model. Driving-wise, the X1 feels pretty planted, honestly. Sure, it's not a rear-wheel drive based system like the old X1 was, but it actually still feels pretty good. There's definitely a little bit of that go-kart feel in the steering wheel. It's nice and tight, and it actually just goes exactly where you point it. It's actually a really nice driving vehicle. In some ways, you can kind of think of this as a taller 2 Series Grand Coupe or a taller 1 Series rather than an actual X class, because it's not really an SUV. You're not going to take this off-road, even though it does have hill descent control, but you're not really going to utilize that because, well, honestly speaking, most drivers aren't going to take this thing off-road. It's just not designed for that. This is an on-road vehicle for people to get to the shops, go about their day. That's really what it's made for. Fuel economy isn't bad neither. Depending on kind of how you drive it, it can vary. But it's rated for 26 combined, 23 in the city, and 31 on the highway. Translating that back into liters per 100 kilometers for Canadian viewers, well, around 10 liters or so in most city driving. And on the highway, I think it actually drops down to around like 7.6 or something like that. Something that is missing from this tester that I found was blind spot monitoring. A lot of cars these days have that as, well, standard equipment or at least an optional extra. I was on the BMW website and I couldn't find it. So, unfortunately, it seems like the X1, you're not able to equip that. If I am wrong, I am sorry. I'm going to make an amendment down in the comment section down below, but I just couldn't find it on the BMW website. While the X1 is the lowest number of the BMW range, it doesn't mean that it slapped some BMW badges on it and called it a day. Yes, while the first gen X1 was based on the 3 Series, so it had that lovely rear-wheel drive driving dynamics, well, this is front-wheel drive based, but it's actually not that bad. There's better utilization of space and minimal decrease to the overall handling. Sure, the all-wheel drive system, even on this front-wheel drive based vehicle, you probably won't be able to slide it or drift it, but who's doing that anyways, especially on an X1? The X1 is made for someone, like I said, that lives in a city, wants a capable vehicle with a higher driving position, and it definitely delivers on that. This particular example here comes in at just over $55,000 Canadian, but you can step into a base X1 at about $45,000. It's not bad, honestly. So if you're looking for a complete package of a fun driving experience, taller riding SUV, this actually is a decent vehicle for that. Something that I must say is I was pleasantly surprised when I jumped into this vehicle because I have driven the old X1, the one that's based on the E90. Honestly, that wasn't that great. Sure, it's rear-wheel drive and it had good driving dynamics, but it wasn't any better than an E91, and it was based off that. If you really wanted that sporty wagon, the E91 was there. So this, well, we can't even get a 3 Series wagon anymore here in Canada, so we don't have a lot of choices. But if you're really looking for that kind of small wagon BMW, this isn't bad at all. If you lower it just a little bit, then it'll look like a wagon instead of an SUV. In any case, thank you so much for watching this video. Like the video if you do. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.